just want to echo the comments of the ranking member on the U.S. MCA. We need to have stronger enforcement across the board, particularly on labor and the environment, and I hope we can get there at the end of the day, at least to get this member's support. But I'd like to move to another question. At the beginning of the month, Americans watched as the president fabricated a diplomatic standoff with Mexico and then reached an agreement that is a slightly modified version of the status quo. If this is the best win the president can get, then he's right about one thing. I'm tired of winning. For an entire week, we had the president throw a high-stakes temper tantrum, put tens of thousands of jobs at risk by threatening tariffs that would raise costs for American consumers and businesses. And I think, Ambassador, you and I both know that tariffs are just a tool. They can be the right tool in some cases, but they definitely can be the wrong one in many cases. And in my mind, imposing tariffs on Mexico because the president felt they weren't doing enough on immigration clearly would be wrong. So I'm trying to understand where we draw the line here. Do you believe it was appropriate for the president to threaten tariffs on Americans because he doesn't believe Mexico was doing enough on immigration? Absolutely. I'm sorry, can you put your microphone on?
I'm sorry. I'll repeat, absolutely.
Absolutely.
As you know, this is not my area. I don't get into immigration. That's another department.
But you do deal with tariffs.
I sit here worry about trade. No, but I do. I do in some cases. I deal with tariffs. But I think from the president's point of view, he had a crisis. It was a crisis. It was building at a very fast pace. Something had to be done. Mexico was not agreeing to do what needed to be done. I think that.
So you believe that absolutely the use of tariffs for a non-trade issue is an appropriate use?
I think if you get to the point where you think it's a national crisis, a national security problem, you do what you have to do. Absolutely, and I would suggest any member would do that.
Let me ask you this: would it be appropriate for the president to threaten tariffs on NATO countries if they think they aren't spending enough on defense? If they think that he thinks that's a national security challenge?
Well, I mean that's up to the president to decide. I haven't given that 5 seconds worth of thought.
Would it be appropriate to threaten tariffs on a country that hasn't pulled out of the Iran deal?
I haven't given that 5 seconds worth of thought.
You know, would it be appropriate for the president to threaten tariffs if he feels the country isn't doing enough to block Huawei from their markets?
I haven't given that 5 seconds.
Well, I know you haven't given it 5 seconds, but here's the point. We need to know what is the line in which tariffs, which affect markets as well as American jobs, because tariffs at the end of the day are taxes. And they're not taxes paid by the country, they're taxes paid by American consumers and businesses. I would wonder, would you think it's appropriate for Mexico to put tariffs on us because we're not doing enough to stop illegal guns and cash from going across the border?
I mean, that's a decision that Mexico has to make. I don't know how big a problem that is. It's just not something I study. I'm a trade person.
But you had an opinion about tariffs as it relates to a non-trade issue.
I have opinions about all kinds of things, and I try to keep them to myself. Hopefully,
well, it would be good because, you know, I'm afraid the president is at the point of, I'm going to call him tariff man. He thinks that tariffs are the end-all and be-all at the end of the day. And it's a dangerous economic game to play, especially when we're not talking about, trade-related issues. And I hope that internally you'll express that, because I know you don't want to express it here, but I could see the response. Let me ask you, do you think that this action with Mexico makes it more or less likely to get a comprehensive, lasting deal with China?
I think it makes it more likely.
More likely, okay. So how is it that you make a deal and then, like the USMCA, and then all of a sudden, for something that has absolutely nothing to do with trade, you get tariffs slapped on you? How does that make any potential trading partner more willing to engage with us if they don't understand actually what type of commitment we'll keep?
Well, in the first place, I think they do understand. In the second place, to the extent we end up with a secure border, that'll make our relationships between the United States and Mexico far better, more prosperous for both of us. I think that's what Mexico wants. I think that's what the United States wants.
It's not a question of borders. It's a question of China, Japan, India. You took them off the GPS list. I hope we can work to solve our issues with India so they can be reinstated into the GSP list. But You have to know that if I'm a trading partner, I want to have some predictability. And when I make a deal with you and then you start tariffs on me for something that has absolutely nothing to do with trade, then that is unpredictable.